Today, I am talking with Cheryl King, author of the book Sitting on Top of the World. She and I recorded this conversation over a year ago, and since then, she has published a sequel novel, Under the Pawpaw Trees, which just came out at the end of July 2023. Now, she and I are going to be recording some new episodes, one for my Patreon community and one for Story Power, which probably won't air until early 2024. So, if you want to know more about her second novel, then please go join us for one of those conversations. I hope that you enjoy this episode because she tells the story of how she came up with the story. And since it takes place in the Depression, it's amazing that it has so many parallels to our own time period. Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I chat about stories and creativity in all different styles and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and my goal is to promote what Dale Carnegie stated in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. It's my firm belief that the goal of most creative people is to try to understand themselves and others. That's what makes artwork of all kinds so compelling. But more than that, the personal stories of my guests promote understanding as well. Roger C. Schenck, a cognitive scientist, said, human beings are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. It's my hope that Story Power will help us understand each other better by sharing the stories of my guests. So today is episode 80, and I'm talking to Cheryl King. Cheryl is an author, and I've been listening to her audiobook. The name of it is Sitting on Top of the World, and I'm really excited to talk to you today, Cheryl. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to know, because I've been listening to the book, I'm only about halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through. But I thought, as I was listening, I thought it is so relevant for today, except that today we have so much more extra noise with social media and the iPhones and iPads and television, but some of the themes are just so relatable to today. So I wanted to know, could you tell about your book and how did you get the idea to write it?
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. And I discovered the same thing as I was writing like, wow, this is so familiar. Even though I, of course, wasn't alive during the Great Depression, which is where when the story takes place.
Mm-hmm.
But so it follows a family on a farm in rural Tennessee. And the main character, June Baker, when so her age range throughout the story goes from just about to turn 12 all the way up to 15.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so it's really you get to see her growth as
Mm-hmm.
she handles the struggles that her family starts to face during the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has an older brother and she really looks up to him. He's just really her world because he teaches her, he guides her, he really watches after her. And in the story, he has to go, well, he makes the decision to go hop on a train
Mhm.
to head somewhere else to try to find work so he can bring money back for their family because they face foreclosure on the farm and pretty much losing everything they have. So he's trying to help. And so, of course, June is devastated when he leaves because she's heard some things about train hopping and how dangerous it is,
Yes.
and she doesn't want him to go. But he goes, and of course, he does help out. But now I don't want to give too much away. A lot happens
Yes.
on that journey for both uh, June
Oh,
and her brother.
mhm. Well, and her parents go through a whole lot too. Things happen to them as well. So, yeah,
Yes.
I'm just to the place where June's mother is getting ill, and her brother and his two friends who've helped him out have come back a couple of different times to
Hmm.
to give the money to the family, but also to help them because of injuries that his father sustained. And so so I'm just loving the narrator. The woman who narrated is so great. But
Whitney
also
Dykehouse.
y-
Yes.
Whitney Dykehouse. Yes, she's fantastic. And I love her. I love that it's like the your voice of
June.
June. Yeah, June. Uh, it's like June's voice is so clear, so and of course that's your writing, but I just love the colloquialisms and the idioms that you use, and the voice of the narrator is so soft. It's got that nice soft southern, it's not a harsh southern dialect. It's
Right, and she did such a great job. I found her on ACX, and
ah
when she when she auditioned to narrate my book, she literally read everything exactly as I read it in my head as I was writing, and then the times when I would read it out loud to myself, during the
mhm,
editing and revising
mhm,
phase. Um,
mhm.
she just was fantastic. So I feel very lucky that I found her.
Oh yes. Because I have a novel and I tried to do my own narration and it was like, oh no, 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 I can't do this. Because there are so many different voices. And even though I used to be an actor, I was never
Mhm.
uh I I'm kind of okay with dialects, but making the register of my voice go up and down in different tones, she does that so well for the men
Yes,
and the
she
women.
does.
Yeah. So how did you get the idea to write your book?
Okay, well, so I participate in flash fiction writing contests regularly. And the main one I like to do is NYC Midnight.
Oh.
And the way that contest works is on a particular, whenever it starts on Friday night, they send out the prompts, and the prompts will be a genre that you have to write in.
Mhm,
Um, I'm trying to remember this particular one, an action that has to take place.
mhm.
Oh, and a location. Um,
Oh, right.
and so one night when I knew my prompts were going to be coming the next day, I just started thinking about which genre would be the hardest for me to write in 1,000 words, and I
Mhm,
landed on historical fiction
mhm,
because how do you get history in such a short story? So I just started trying to think of some ideas. What will I write if I get historical fiction as my genre?
mhm,
And so I was reminded of an article that I read years ago about the hobos of the Great Depression and how they would
mhm.
go riding the rails. And it was a fascinating concept to me. And I remember thinking that was pretty cool. So I started so I decided, yep, that's what I'm going to write about. If I get historical fiction, it's going to be set during the Great Depression. And I thought, what if I have just this really spunky girl who goes train hopping? And so I started kind of digging into that a little bit, and how it was not uncommon for girls and women to go train hopping, and they would disguise themselves as men so that they as kind of a layer of protection. It was also common for them to have guns with them so they can further protect themselves. But anyway, that idea just started spinning around in my head, and I basically had the 1,000-word flash fiction piece written in my head. But I didn't get that as my genre. I got something else, like science fiction or something. But that story wouldn't leave me alone. It was still just going on in my head, like, okay, I have to write this anyway. So I started writing, and it grew into a novel.
And that's fantastic, because I thought maybe there might be some family connection or something, but yeah, I like that you got the idea from an article. It's a wonderful family. I love the family so much, and how they
Thank you.
survive.
I wanted the age group that I'm writing for. I was kind of aiming for around middle school, because I'm a longtime educator. I taught middle school for many years, and because of that, I've read a lot of young adult, middle grade, and young adult, and there seems to be an age group that's a little bit left out in the way the publishing industry does things, because technically YA is for 12 to 18. Well, someone who's 12 years old, I think, is a little young for some of the stuff that passes as YA these days. And I remember, part of my job was kind of vetting novels and stuff that we would use for classroom instruction, because we didn't want we couldn't have anything too risque or anything that would upset parents, so it's a very careful line you have to walk as an educator. What is okay for my classroom and what is not. So when I was writing, I really wanted something meaningful for that age group, the 12, 13, 14, maybe, I guess, back that up to 11, 12, 13, 14, because I didn't want them to have something that's too babyish, which a lot of them feel about middle grade books. But I didn't want it to have cursing and sexual scenes and too much violence and gore. So what was I getting to? The family. I wanted, a strong family. And I just wanted to convey images of love and respect and hope and hard work. And of course, those things I think were probably more important in earlier times, or they were more prioritized in earlier times than they seem to be now.
I'm an educator.
So I think that fit in.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And it doesn't read like a YA novel. I don't think it reads like that. I think it reads like a literary fiction, a historical fiction type of novel. Yes, because I mean, the whole family, every character in the family is, yes, it's June's story. She's the protagonist, but you care about the mother and the father and her brother, Josie. Yeah. Josie. And you care about his friends and her friend. And it's so sad, when her friend has to stop being her friend, when her friend's father dies. I mean, all these things happen. And it's like, oh yeah, well, that's what really did happen during the Depression. My mom grew up during the Depression. And her father was fortunate and worked on the Bonneville Dam in Washington, Oregon, that was on the Columbia River that goes between Washington and Oregon. And yeah, so, but, in the early days of the Depression, Mom never talked about what happened in the early days of the Depression, what happened to her dad, how before he got the job with the WPA or whatever it was. So, yeah, I don't know. I just love it. I love the book, and I think that adults will enjoy just as much as young people. And I'm an educator too, although I taught high school. I didn't teach middle school. I taught seventh grade for 1 year, about killed me. But it probably was because I was quite a bit older then. I was 51 or something. And I was like, I'm really ready to have real conversations and not all this drama. And after a while, even high school, I was like, I can't do drama. So then I started teaching college part-time, which was much better. But yes. So I understand that whole, because since I taught theater and drama, I would direct plays, and I'd have to be careful of the plays that I chose. And I remember I chose one that I thought was really great, and I got it cleared. But some of the parents really protested about some of the things that happened in the play and wrote. My husband calls it the out of your mind section of the newspaper, letters to the editor. And they wouldn't, they didn't give their names. They wouldn't give this one, it was only one letter, and they didn't give their name. So it's like, well, I'm sorry, that's anonymous. I'm not going to. Most people really accepted the play and thought it was great. But yes, I realized, I guess I need to be more careful about what I choose, even though I got it approved. But so I'm interested in, I'm sure you love stories, and especially since you're a member of a flash fiction group. I've never tried to do that.
Oh.
I don't think that fast, I guess. When it comes to storytelling, I don't think that fast. But how did you get hooked on stories and writing?
I've always been a story writer. I remember, I think the earliest I can remember was maybe it was third grade or so when we had to write. I don't even remember. I don't know what the assignment wrote a story. It must have been around fall, maybe Halloween time, because my story was about a little girl who loved pumpkins so much, she started to turn into a pumpkin. And very silly concept, but I illustrated it, and I had, repetition. Like each morning she woke up and went out to the kitchen for breakfast, and her mom would say, well, why is your face orange? My face isn't orange. So she runs into the mirror and sees, oh my gosh, my face is orange. And then the next day it's, why do you have triangles for eyes? I don't have triangles for eyes. She runs and looks in the mirror. I have triangles for eyes. So it goes on like that. And I swear I still have that somewhere in a box. I just need to find it. But that, I don't know. I've loved reading as well. And I think that's what makes a writer, is because you do so much reading of all different styles, wide reading of a range of genres. I think is the road to writing, I guess. And and then of course your life takes you in different directions. And so even though I had a couple of dreams as a child, of course I wanted to be a published author, but then I also, for a time, thought my dream job would be to be an editor at a publishing house.
Oh.
But then you people tell you things like, well, you have to move to New York for that. So, okay, that's out. I'll do this instead,
Mhm, mhm,
um, because I grew up before internet and that kind of thing.
mhm, mhm.
So, and then I guess it was just in the past few years when something came across my Facebook feed about this NYC midnight flash fiction. Actually, the first one I ever did was a short story, I think. Anyway, I entered and it was so much fun and I actually placed well. And so all of a sudden my love for writing was rekindled
Yeah.
and the
Now
rest is history.
now that group, is it do they take some of the stories and put them in an anthology and publish? Or what do they
They do
do?
not, as far as I know, they don't do an anthology.
Hmm.
I know that they publish the winning stories on their website, but
Oh.
I've never gotten quite that far.
Mhm, mhm.
So, but each of their contests consists of several rounds,
Oh.
like 4 rounds,
Mm,
and I've never made it to the finals yet. I've gotten close, but not quite. Um, and I just got an email from them that their short screenplay writing competition is coming up, and I'm considering entering that, even though I've never written a screenplay.
mhm.
It might be fun.
Yes. That does sound fun. I took playwriting when I got my master's. I took a couple of classes of it. But that's not really my forte. I can analyze a play till the cows come home, but I can't.
Yeah.
But writing it, it's really difficult. Usually, the second I've heard lots of playwrights and movie makers and screenwriters say the second act is the hardest to write
Uh,
because you've got to, as my writer friend used to say, you have to beat your characters up in the second act. in the
oh,
second in the middle of the book or in the second act, you have to beat your characters
mm,
up. Yeah, and that's hard. At least it's hard for me. Some people go, oh no, I'm having fun. I love beating
yeah.
them up. But that's just not me. So I always struggle with that. I struggle with beating my characters, putting them through their paces. That's another way to say it, because they have to go through all these trials and tribulations to make the ending satisfying. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where I am in your book right now, is they're going through some trials and tribulations and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, where's this going to lead?" And that's always what you want your readers to be saying is, "What's going to happen?
Mhm.
What's going to happen to my characters?" Now, you and I met through Pod Pro. Is that right? Pod Pro?
Yes.
And I was intrigued. The reason I contacted you is because I was intrigued by your story about your publisher.
Yes.
And I thought, well, now that their publisher's gone wonky, you can tell that story if you want to, or maybe you're not supposed to. Uh, but I was thinking, is she marketing her books? So, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
That's an excellent question, and I'll I'll tell the quick version of the story, um, because of course, when I finished my book, I wanted to go the traditional route because I
Mhm.
thought, oh, this book is so great. Of course, I'm going to get an agent, and then it'll be published, and then I'll be a bestseller, right? Isn't that what we all think?
Mhm.
Um, but what ended up happening is I did a pit mad pitch event on Twitter, and I got a like from a small publisher.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, well, I could go directly through a small publisher that doesn't require an agent.
Mhm. Mhm.
I hadn't thought about that before. So
Mhm.
um So I sent in my manuscript and I got an offer. And since I had some queries out with agents and some other small publishers, so I went ahead and let them know, hey, I have this offer. And then I started getting other offers, but I ended up signing with this publisher. And oh, I wish I could go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
I should have heeded some red flags that were there, some glaring red flags that I overlooked because I was just so excited. Oh, somebody likes
Mm-hmm.
my manuscript, they want to publish it. And this person sounded so great, and he was answering all my questions and attentive to my emails. And anyway, now, of course, I said I would tell the short version, and I've rambled on. But he published my book. 3 weeks later, he said he's closing, and I had not received a dime of my royalties, nor had several other authors in his um,
Stable
group
of
of
authors.
authors.
Mm-hmm.
He also had not paid his staff, his editors, his
Oh,
his
no.
marketing person, his, other staff members. So much came out about him after that it was insane. But he ended up ghosting us all. None of us have gotten a dime. And so I was left in this quandary. What in the world am I going to do with my book? Because no publisher is going to want to buy a book now that was already published. It already had its
Mm-hmm.
release and its launch. I tried. I contacted some publishers and agents, and got that response. I'm sorry, but since it's already been published, you know, and so it was recommended that I self-publish,
Mm-hmm.
which I did, which was not easy, and it wasn't something I ever wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't feel like I had the time or the skill set to deal with
Mm-hmm.
all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a lot of help. My fellow jilted authors from that crooked publisher. We teamed up and supported each other, and that was invaluable. And so, yeah, marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing. I've tried a number of things. I I entered a number of writing book
Mm-hmm.
contests,
Mm-hmm.
book awards I submitted for, and I did end up winning one the Eric Hoffer Book Awards. I won first place in the YA category, and I won their First Horizon Award, which is for debut authors, and I was
Cool.
on the grand prize shortlist. So I thought, oh, that's great, because that will help, get my book out there, and that will help
Mm-hmm.
um, present me as a legit author.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sales haven't really picked up. So
Yeah.
I'm still waiting on a few other book awards that I submitted to, but I won't know anything on those till the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried doing Amazon ads, and I seem to make sales when my ads are running, but not enough to make up for the cost of running the ads.
Right.
And that same goes for doing, Facebook ads or boosting posts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. I'm spending this money and I'm seeing a few sales here and there, but not enough to offset the cost. So it's been a it's been a losing battle. I hate to sound negative on that, but
Mm-hmm.
man, April was a good month for sales, and I think that's because it was Indie Author Month, and
Mm-hmm.
the writing community on Twitter has been fantastic, because so many of the indie authors there want to support other indie authors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've tried the Goodreads giveaways, but it's so expensive to do a Goodreads giveaway of, your paperback or your hardcover. So I did the ebook ones that's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was hoping to get from that was more reviews, because if I could, get more authentic reader reviews,
Mm-hmm.
then word will spread that way. But I've done 2 ebook giveaways on Goodreads. So that's 150 people who got my book, and I got maybe 2 reviews, 2 or 3 from that.
Oh no, that's too bad. Yeah.
It's like, how do you get people to just write a review, just a real quick,
Mm-hmm.
whether you loved it or hated it, it doesn't matter. Just put in a review, because, it's
Yeah.
a struggle.
It is a struggle. I'm older, so I didn't want to do the traditional publishing route. So my husband and I did it independent. My first book. Well, I have a children's book that we did the whole how do you independently publish a book process with the children's book.
Mhm.
But my novel, and I haven't had a lot of sales either, but I decided that independent publishing was the way to go for me because I didn't want to wait 3 years or however many years I was going to have to wait to have the book come out. And I do a lot of other things besides that. Like I'm a guest on podcasts. I have a podcast, which you are on.
Mhm.
And I have a blog. So yeah, as I do all these other things, I learn a little bit here and a little bit there about how to market it and not buy ads, but market it without having to buy the ads and do the giveaways and all of that kind of thing. Because I'm semi-retired and don't have a whole lot of money. So I'm doing all I can to do it without paying out all that money. And because it's expensive and it's time consuming. And
Mhm.
so I'm trying to create communities or attach myself to communities. But yeah, I just don't have the answer for that. I just think it's a fantastic book and I'm willing to write a review for it because
Oh,
it's
thank you.
it's wonderful. Yes. Yeah. And I interviewed someone who she's got the idea to write this book. It's about Ukraine, about this 3 generations of women in Ukraine. And it just happened to come out right as the war was starting. And it's like, oh, that's lightning in a bottle. So she's going great guns with her book. But yeah, it doesn't happen like that very often, I don't think. So, what are your plans? Do you have another book in the works?
I am working on a sequel to
Ah,
Sitting on Top of the World.
good.
And in fact, in my author newsletter that comes out each month, I am including little snippets of my rough draft as I
Ah,
write it for my
yes.
subscribers. And if anyone's interested in that, they can go to CherylKingWritesThings.com, and that's my website. And at the bottom, there's a place where you can subscribe. But
Mhm.
I'm working on the sequel, and then of course, as as happens, I have another idea swirling around. When I really should
Oh.
be finishing my sequel, I'm world building for a dystopian novel.
Ah,
So,
that sounds great.
and then I have a middle grade magical realism that I started writing so long ago that there are references in it to like phone books and pay phones and stuff. I would love to revisit it because I still like the idea. There's just so much of it that has to be completely rewritten.
Well, you could make it steampunk. I have friends who just love steampunk.
Okay, I'm going to admit this. I don't understand what steampunk is. What is it?
Well, I have only read a couple of books, and the first one is called The Invisible Library. And what they like, the one library, the Invisible Library, is in our universe. And then, but the librarians have to travel to other universes that are similar to ours, but to get books that like shouldn't be in that universe. They have to go get them and retrieve them and bring them back here. That's what I recall anyway. But anyway, so they're traveling to these other universes, and they're similar to ours, but the people might have technology, but they wear like 1800s type of clothing, or the technology might be from some other time period, but they have elements of things in those universes that are like our universe, but they're also have elements. So it's like this mishmash of time periods and technologies and so on and so forth, which I've read 2 or 3 of books. That's a series of books, that Invisible Library. I've read 2 or 3 in that series, and they're really interesting because once they get to the new universe, they have to figure out, they have to navigate. They have to figure out how to navigate through that new universe and because some of them have magical elements and, to it. So yeah,
That does sound interesting.
That's kind of I'm 69, so I do have students that read steampunk or former students who write steampunk. But yeah, that's kind of my understanding of it. Yeah, so you could still have the telephone books, but maybe you could have they could have cell phones too or something, Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm not sure. There are so many books published nowadays, but I was going to go back to something you said about your newsletter and putting little snippets of your new book there. I have a couple of friends that I met through Facebook. I've never met them face to face, but they both were on my podcast, and they're friends of each other, writing friends. One lives in New Jersey and one lives in Kansas. And so they'll call each other and do a half an hour of writing or something. And so to keep themselves accountable, and they both write science fiction. So they have they write similar genres. But one thing that Stacey Bennett is the woman I'm referring to. Stacey Bennett does is she'll take snippets of the book that she's working on and put them on her Facebook group. She has a Facebook like writer fan page. And that's one thing that I have not figured out how to do. I have an author page on Facebook, but I can't get people to respond back to me, or I don't know what it is. So, I can't even get people. I get people to like my blog posts, but most of the time they don't comment. They'll just like it. So I haven't cracked that code yet. But Stacey gets people who will write comments to her about her little snippet, and I want to know more about that, or whatever the comments are, because I follow that page too. And Audra McDonald, well, her author name is A.D. Trosper. Audra Trosper, not McDonald. She's an actress. Audra A.D. Trosper is also a science fiction, and she also has her own fan page. And she does similar things. It's not exactly the same thing as Stacey, but she has great engagement with her. So I haven't cracked that code, as I said, but I just keep trying things. And it sounds like that's what you're doing too.
Yes, I may be going about it willy-nilly, just throwing things on the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
In fact, I tried, I I have tried TikTok. One thing that I said I would never do, I made a TikTok, and honestly, I'm just having fun with it. I'm
Mhm.
not, you know, I don't know. I've posted some book things, of course, on there to try to promote, but I'm also doing fun things, like I'll see a video that's a trend and I'll try it. And it has nothing to do with books, but I want to do it anyway, just have fun with it.
Yes. And besides, the more your name gets out there, probably the better.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I've tried. I don't travel a lot, but when anytime my husband and I are out, like we went on a little getaway to another city near here and
Mhm.
stayed in a bed and breakfast, and I left my book. I left a copy of
Mm.
my book with a bookmark and a little postcard, and assigned a little note in it, and I put it on their shelf in their
Yes.
library there. I sent one with my son. My oldest son is 18 and he took a trip to California, and I
Mhm.
sent a copy of my book with him so that he could, actually, I think I sent two, so that he could leave one at the airport, leave one in the hotel or whatever.
Right.
So that might sound crazy, but I've
No,
done that a little bit.
I don't think that sounds crazy at all because I think I heard this on NPR. They were talking to a woman who is she's probably still alive. She writes romance novels, and
Mhm.
so she would leave them at the dentist office or at the eye doctor or you know um, at the she'd leave them where whenever she was someplace where people have to sit and read, that's where she
Mhm.
would leave them. And that's kind of how she got a following, was just leaving her book at places like that. And I just think that's a great idea. I love that idea. Because when Barry and I went to Los Alamos, it was shortly after I published my book. We went for a trip to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and we were staying in a bed and breakfast. And I took my book and gave it to the woman who owned the family that owned the bed and breakfast. I gave it to her. So
Yeah.
we the same with us. We don't travel very often, but that's a really great idea. I love that idea.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I'm a very introverted person, and um I'm not comfortable with, you know, begging for reviews,
Mhm, mhm,
going online and, please review my book. I really just want it to come authentically.
mhm,
Like if someone at that hotel or wherever, hey, look at this, and they start reading it and they like it, and then they go and review it. And so my dream would be for just word of mouth, it would start spreading around
mhm,
and then become um, become more popular and more people would want to read it.
mhm,
Um, and so that's my hope, is somebody somewhere will pick it up wherever I've left it and like it
mhm,
and spread the word.
mhm. Yes. So where can people find your book now that you've
They
self-published?
so it's on Amazon, of course, but they can also find it on Barnes and Noble. Um, Also, I believe Walmart has it online. For some reason, Target does not. I don't know why. Um, let's see, bookshop.org has it online. And I've also set up my website so that readers, if they would like a signed copy, they can buy one directly from my website.
Oh, that's great. Yes. So yeah. Um, is the ebook and the audiobook, are they on Apple Books too?
So the ebook is on, yes, the ebook should be everywhere you can find
Mhm,
ebooks. The
mhm,
audiobook is on Audible, Amazon, and
mhm.
iTunes.
Oh, good. Oh, that's great. Okay, good. So, yeah, so I don't know how I can help you, but I think probably since this episode won't even air until 2023, what I would like to do is post our conversation on my Patreon page, which of course doesn't have a whole lot of people yet, but I do a public when I'm promoting authors, I do a public, and it goes to, I do it on Instagram, LinkedIn, and they do Facebook and Twitter for me. All I have to do is click a little thing. Whenever my podcast posts, it goes to Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And then I manually put it on Instagram. And I'm going to be talking about it. I mean, yeah, I might even write a blog post about it because I just think it's so well written, and I love the voice of it. It seems like it's true to the time period. I've read a lot of historical fiction. It's true to the time period, but it's also I just got this feeling of, oh, wow, it's exactly what we've been going through these last few years, except that they take out all the social media and all the distractions and stuff, which I kind of wish we could get back to, or at least make time for more interactions between family members and taking time to be more quiet and that kind of thing. I actually make time for that for myself. So I'm an introvert too. I totally understand that whole trying to figure out the marketing thing. And not because I'm with you. I don't want to have sleazy, marketing. So do you have anything else you want to share with the listeners?
Well, one thing that's exciting right now is that there's a little room off of our garage that when we bought this house, the previous owner had used it for he was a locksmith, I guess, and he used that as like a workshop for himself. And since we moved in, it was nothing but storage, mostly my husband's junk and pool stuff, and it just was really messy in there. So we cleaned it out, put down new floors. I painted the walls a really light purple, and that is now my she shed, which is going to be my library / writing retreat. And I'm working on it slowly because I need some bookshelves and I have some stuff, of course, my teacher stuff that's stored in there right now, boxes that I go through, and so I'm going to have my own little she shed, which can also be called my office, because I figured that from here on out, whatever I write will be self-published, and I named my imprint Purple Marble Press.
That's fantastic.
And as you finish reading Sitting on Top of the World, you'll see the meaning behind that. But and so it's my Purple Marble office as well.
So I love that because I was just listening this morning as I was making breakfast to the part where June had been reading Virginia Woolf. Is it A Room of Her Own? And I've read that. And so you're making a room of your own. I love it.
Yes. So I'm excited about that.
That is exciting. Yeah. What keeps coming to me about my podcast and about my writing and my blog, just keep doing the work and, making connections where you can. I love that you are entering contests and things like that, because who knows when someone will read what you've written and be excited about it and want to, help you in some way. Be a maybe even publish your work, and it wouldn't be such a bad experience for you the second time around.
Yeah, I actually did another writing contest where my piece was selected as a winner for that month. And so it is an anthology.
Yes.
And that's called The Big Purple Book of, and excuse the language, badass stories from 2021.
Cool.
And then I did another one. It was a 42 word story,
Uh-huh.
and that's going to be the 42 stories anthology. And they're still working on that.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember if they still need some submissions, but I think they're getting ready to publish that.
So that's
And
great.
yeah, and so, sometimes when I do one of these flash competitions, if it doesn't win, I'll revise it and submit it elsewhere
Mhm.
for publication. And so I've had um few
Mhm.
successes there, and it's a lot of fun just to keep my creativity going and keep writing.
Yes, that's right. That's so important because I I mean, I used to be an actor when I was in theater, and I can't tell you how many actors I've heard say, "Oh yes, I was a 10-year overnight success." Took them 10 years to be an overnight success. And they just kept trying and trying and trying. And yeah. And besides, another person that I talked to, he's a musician. He lives in New York City. He's a bass player for a substitute bass player a lot of times for R&B bands and rock and roll bands and things. He also has his own band and he plays like at weddings and bar mitzvahs and so on and so forth. And he also plays for musicals. But he said, one night we were jamming and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and at this bar, and there were only like 10 or 15 people there. And I looked over at one of the other musicians and I said to her, I'm not sure we're really doing anything worthwhile here. And she said, Oh, yes, we are. We're creating community. So even if only a few people read your work or my work, or listen to my podcast or read my blog, I feel like in some way we're creating community and that makes me keep going. So keep going.
I like that. I like that perspective.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, his book is uh something about am I famous yet? It's the first it's one of those titles that has am I famous yet? And then there's a subtitle to it, which I can't remember. His name is Ivan Bodley. Yeah. Am I famous yet? And he's met all these famous people and stuff, and he's played with famous bands, but he's not famous himself personally, and that's okay with him. He's fine with that. So yeah, that was a fun. I met him on Podmatch. That was a fun interview. Neat guy. Well, good luck. And I will definitely write a review. Uh, if even if I can't write it on, sometimes Amazon's kind of weird. If you don't buy the book,
Mhm.
you can't write the review. But I will write something on my blog post about it and on my Patreon page, and I'll send it to my out to my social media outlets because I just think it's a fantastic book. I loved it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah. Can't wait to finish it.
I hope you love the ending.
Well, but if there's a sequel, yeah, if I don't like that ending, it's not the ending.
Yeah.
Cheryl, thank you so much for talking to me today. I have enjoyed this so much.
Thank you. So have I. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
I hope hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a rating and/or review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. I invite you to join my Patreon community at patreon.com/storypower, all one word. Or if you like, you can subscribe to Story Power on Apple Podcasts. It's my aim to build a community where we discuss the stories we love and talk about what we learned from them. I offer extra audio content and story suggestions to my patrons on both platforms. Remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Let's spread the story love. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.